Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Melinda Hart. You are watching Stamping with Hart. I am an independent demonstrator with Stampin Up. And today we are going to do a classic stamping technique called triple time stamping. This is the Lucky Clover stamp set. That's one of the stamp sets we're going to be using for this technique. We're also going to be using two-tone Flora, the stamp set from the Fancy Flora suite. And we're going to be sort of stepping up the triple time stamping technique, where we're going to be doing a little bit of masking and layering our stamps. Now, I do want to mention that I do have a free project sheet for the cards that you are going to be seeing in this video. If you are interested, there will be a link in the description box below where you can go to download the free project sheet. I will also have the information on my blog, and that link will also be in the description box. So, triple time stamping is a classic stamping technique. And I had mentioned wanting to do a card where we were doing like a heavy focus on stamping because the last few projects I had done were either more focused on die cutting or were very simple stamping projects. So we're going to have fun with this one. Now, this stamping technique is, it's tried and true. It is such a cool technique. Now, I am going to lay out the pieces here. You could either take a screenshot of this, of the measurements you're going to need for your pieces for your card, or I will have all of the information on my blog and on that project sheet where you can download it there, and you can get the information, whatever, works best for you. I'm not going to read off all the measurements here in the replay. But what I will tell you is that you're going to want to have a solid stamping surface for this. One of the questions that I had gotten in my live was, can we do this with clear blocks or should we do this with the Stamparatus? And so in this video, I actually tried both. And in the original replay, or in my original Facebook Live, rather, I had just used my clear blocks. And in the replay, I decided based on that question to try it out with the Stamparatus because I haven't done triple time stamping with the Stamparatus. And it was a very interesting process, which you're going to see a little bit later in the video. So we're going to be using the regular Stampin' Seal. This adhesive isn't as strong as Seal Plus, and we want something that is tacky, but something that I'm going to be able to take these layers apart. So we're just going to use the Stampin' Seal. I think would be the best choice for this adhesive so that we can pull these pieces back apart without tearing our paper. So I'll show you my process for that. Okay, so here what we want to do is put our 3 layers together. So this is pretty much the main point for this technique. We're just going to put just a small amount of that tacky adhesive. I'm going to put my finger to it and I'm just going to try to dull that tackiness a little bit. And then we're going to place this center, our next layer, and we're going to repeat that same process where I'm going to put that adhesive down just a little bit in the center, and I'm going to try to remove a little bit of that tackiness with my finger. With my seal, I always, for some reason, have to get that going manually. And then we're going to do that where we put that smallest piece over that tacky, and we're going to place it center again. This is the regular basic white cardstock, so it's not very thick, so it should be okay for our stamping. But once you have all of that in place, I'm going to give it a shake here in a second so that you can see it is being held together. My little trick to taking these back apart after we're done with our stamping is by giving them a wiggle, and you'll see that in just a minute. But anyway, I'm going to be bringing in 3 colors. We're going to be using Pear Pizzazz, Garden Green, and Evening Evergreen for this combination of shamrocks and clovers. So with this technique, I do like using a larger stamp, something that's like 2 inches, 3 inches, something that you can find. And the largest Clover stamp is a really fun one for this particular technique. Same with our flowers. We're going to have those larger flowers. And the reason is because part of the fun of this technique is having a stamped image go over more than one layer. So you want your stamped image to kind of layer onto that second piece or the third piece or some combination of that. And with those larger stamps, you can really sort of capture that pretty easily. So I decided to stamp this Clover 3 times. This Clover is being stamped in garden green, and it kind of became the thing that I used to do my lineup when I assembled my cards. So you'll see when we stamp this down, and I'm going to speak to cling stamps versus photopolymer here in just a minute. The Lucky Clover stamps are cling stamps, cling mount stamps. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put your large stamp down. You're going to want to press firmly. You're going to want to make sure that you're on a nice solid surface so that you can get a nice clean stamp. This is if you're using the clear blocks. We're doing our freehand stamping first. And the one thing I noticed was even though I applied a good amount of pressure, even though, I really felt like it was well inked and I had everything right where it should be, you'll see when I take that stamp away that right where the layers are, I did not get a clean impression. Now, it's not a big deal because we're going to layer in between and you're not going to see it because those evening evergreen layers that you cut for your card are actually going to cover those areas where it didn't stamp cleanly. But what I will say, and you'll get to see this with the next card, when you're stamping with photopolymer, you literally see the ink transferring from the stamp to the paper, and it's so much easier to get a good clean image. Now, I did better with this Clover here. So if you do this a few times, right, it's just like anything new that you're trying. You just want to do this a couple of different times, maybe cut enough, paper to do 2 cards in case you mess one up. You could always turn it around and use the other side. But this is such a fun technique to try. And those larger stamps I have found are what I use to line the card up in the end. So that first set of stamps is, this largest Clover, that's garden green. We're going to do Pear Pizzazz with this small Clover and then also with that medium-sized Shamrock. And then our little tiny baby Clover and Shamrocks are going to be stamped in Evening Evergreen. Now, just for a moment, and you might hear me mentioning this a couple of times throughout the video, I really wanted to feature the 2021-2023 in colors for a couple of different reasons. I personally loved this color collection. I use Evening Evergreen almost all the time. I love Soft Succulent. I would say that the colors I use the least are Pale Papaya and Polished Pink, but I really got to showcase all of these colors in this video. You're going to see all of the finished cards here in the end, and I'll have photos up on the blog as well. But if you are interested in getting any of those products, whether or not you haven't tried the collection yet and you want to try it before it retires, whether or not you want to restock up on things like re-inkers, cardstock, whether you're doing the sampler packs or they have 2 different sizes, 8.5 by 11 and 12 by 12 if you want to get the variety pack where you get all 5 colors. And then they have the regular packs where you can just get a full pack of Evening Evergreen or Soft Succulent, whatever you need. I would suggest stocking up on those items before the official retirement list is announced, because when that happens, everybody starts buying it quickly. And with SALE-A-BRATION, this is an ideal time to stock up on those things and actually save. And if you are going to take advantage of the join offer, or you've been thinking about the join offer that they have during celebration, we only have like 11 days left for you to get $175 worth of product and only pay either $129 or $99, depending on the option that you choose. So you can get all of the in color stuff, put that in your starter kit, start getting that 20% discount, and you'll get first access to the new catalog. You'll see it first. You'll get a chance to pre-order those items first. So there are a lot of benefits and perks to becoming a demonstrator. Now you'll see I'm taking this smallest zigzag stamp and I am stamping an actual border around the edge. And for me, that was because I wanted to eliminate as much white space as possible. I really wanted to create really good, solid patterns with each one of these cards. Now, I decided to just weave this in and around and about, but a lot of times I will start on the edges and work my way in, which is what you see me doing here. Now, I don't mind the overlap, but if you don't like that, then you'll like the next card where we're using the masking paper. So in this case, I did use Pear Pizzazz for both this medium size shamrock and then the slightly smaller Clover. But you could do a fourth green. Stampin' Up! Has so many great different green colors. And I find that whether you're doing 2, 3, or 4 colors, particularly with this stamping technique, it looks fabulous. Like I mixed a bunch of different colors and I really thought it was cool. So on the soft succulent version of this card, which I'm not going to be recreating in the video, but you will see it at the end of the video. I'll also have pictures posted on the blog and on the project sheet. But I did 4 greens with the soft succulent just to see what the difference was, and I thought it looked great. So definitely up to you, but I wanted a nice even combination of greens, and so I'm just using this to fill in. And if you don't want that layered look, like if you don't want those little mini shamrocks and clovers over top of these, mid-size shamrocks that I'm stamping now, then I would suggest masking. But for me, I thought it was adorable. I didn't mind it at all. So I did it both ways to sort of show the difference, what that looks like. But you could have a lot of fun with this. Now, I will have a full list of the products used on these cards, both on my blog, and I'll have them listed on the project sheet as well. So if you want to see what I used. But if you haven't tried Stampin' Up's masking paper yet, I highly recommend it. So let me know in the comments, what is your favorite in color? Is it pale papaya, soft succulent, evening evergreen, fresh freesia, or polished pink? And the other question being, have you done triple time stamping? Have you tried this technique? I would love to hear from you in the comments and see if this is something that you have done. I did receive a comment during my live, or maybe it was in the replay, where somebody had said, I totally forgot about this. I totally forgot about this stamping technique. And you know what? I did too. Sometimes I have to go back through and look at, some of the oldie but the goodies, right? Like we forget the simpler, easier, fun stamping techniques. So I am so happy that I am able to, kind of bring this back and show it to you and see, get your opinion on what you think of this, or if you would like to see more stamping techniques from me. So let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. I would love to see what you think. Now, here is my little tip for sort of taking these pieces back apart once you're done with your stamping. Give it a wiggle. Just give it a slight wiggle. Don't just pull on it. And I really felt like that released the adhesive really nicely. And I have to say that while I don't typically use the regular seal, I typically use Stampin' Seal Plus. I just like it better. This seal turned out to be perfect. It was the perfect adhesive for this. So you can see me wiggling these pieces apart. And honestly, look at those frames. Aren't they cool? Like, even if you weren't doing the triple time stamping, like if we weren't going to be, mounting these all on top of each other, they would still look great. Like, even just as a cute border, and then I even thought about doing this for the inside of the card, where I thought maybe I should do this, and just remove that outer piece, or the smallest piece, and then stamp a sentiment on the inside. And it's just really cute and framed that way, like that's something I don't typically do with my cards, but that would be so cute. I might do that for my paper pumpkin alternate or something, on a future card. But I absolutely love that look. You guys know how much, well, if you watch me regularly, you know how much I love frames, and this is certainly no exception. So I'm just lining that up. So here is something to keep in mind with triple time stamping. If you have your pattern going in a certain direction, you want to maintain that. So you don't want to, when you're putting your layers together, you don't want to flip the thing over and have it be upside down, because you want that continuation of the image so that it looks like it's all part of the same stamp. So you could see those shamrocks and clovers, particularly the largest stamped ones. Once they lined up, I was like, okay, we're good to go. And we went ahead and put them together. So for this next card that we are going to be working on, because I'm going to be finishing this one up right now, I am going to slightly speed up the video. Okay, so I used the layering circle dies, and I just stamped good luck, and we're just going to go ahead and place this in the center, but you could place this wherever you would want on this card and it would look cute, honestly. One of the other things that got shouted out in my live was, you could actually pop your layers up on dimensionals, which was such a great point. That was Tracy Bish who said that. So she... when she said that, I said, I will do a version of this where I do pop them up on dimensionals. And so you'll also get to see that more towards the end. But these are typically flat cards. So if you like to mail flat cards, this is a great technique to do. I think that this will really wow, your card recipient. So here is our second card. This is with two-tone Flora. We're going to be using polished pink, sweet sorbet, and then again, we're coming in with garden green. And you can see my layers are all in polished pink and basic white. And we're going to repeat this process again and again. We're going to do the same triple time stamping technique where we're using, that seal, and I'm going to touch the seal each time before I tack it down, just to kind of take some of the stick away. But I do recommend that wiggle as you're taking these pieces apart for however many cards you do. Now I'm going to go ahead and speed this up just a little bit, and we'll talk about this next process. Okay, so from this stamp set, I was determined to use all the flowers, but for this particular card, I am highlighting which flowers rather, specifically I am using. So we're using that largest flower, that smaller flower, and then also the smaller leaves. So this is going to be the only card that has the smaller leaves with the flower. And I already have my layers tacked together. Okay, so for those of you who really like to get more of a crisp stamp, oh my gosh, do I prefer photopolymers over cling for this particular technique. Can you see how much better the image is? Because when you're pressing down on the photopolymer, you can literally see the ink transferring to the paper. So in those areas where we have those layers, where those natural gaps sort of happen with the ink, you can actually just press a little bit more firmly, and then you can transfer that ink down to the paper. So it was such a better impression with the photopolymer stamps in this case, because of course the Lucky Clover stamps are in cling. So I could not see and I felt like I had evenly distributed pressure, but it was just different. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, as I'm stamping, again, starting with my largest flower base in polished pink, I'm showing you guys the masking paper. And what I'm doing is I'm actually stamping on that line in the middle just because it's easier when you're taking the masking paper off in the back. It's not a big deal if you're not on the line, but I kind of just go to the line by default, and then I just use the little scrappy pieces later. So we're gonna fussy cut those out, and I don't feel like you guys need to see me fussy cutting that, so I'm gonna keep that off camera, but if you want to see it in real time, I do have it on the regular replay on Facebook. So what I'm doing with this sweet sorbet, so with this detail layer, I wanted to stamp off once so that it was slightly lighter. I wanted something darker than, polished pink, but lighter than sweet sorbet. So stamping off is a great way to sort of get that custom in between color when you need it. Now, normally I can line up 2-step stamps, no problem. And in my live, if you happen to go and watch the live, I could not get the lineup right. And, often you'll hear demonstrators saying it's so hard to get a proper lineup when we have the camera, where our eyes would normally be when we're lining this up. But honestly, I've done that and I've not had a problem like I did last night. So I'm not sure why I was so off my game, but I decided to sleep on it and then come back to the card the next day. And I'm going to tell you guys the truth. Honestly, I did not really notice it when I looked at the completed card this morning. So, because I really thought about refilming this, and I thought, you know what? No, it's imperfect and it's okay that it's imperfect, at least to me. If that is something that really bothers you, I would recommend using the Stamparatus. This was the question that came up, and somebody was asking me, can you do this with the Stamparatus? And that way you would know, that you would get your 2-step stamping in line and it would look better. And I thought, yeah, let's try that. And so I do. And that is part of this video. But I did this imperfectly. I actually kept it in so that you guys could see me just not kind of quite getting the lineup like I typically do. And if I did miss out on a certain spot like I did with that flower, you can go back in with that photopolymer stamp and fix it. All you have to do is like wiggle it a little on the edge and it just pops right in there. So I have to say I love the photopolymers for this. Definitely my preference for triple time stamping. So here I am coming in with my sweet sorbet, stamping off again to try to keep that consistent, trying to get the lineup with my flower. And you guys, I mean, I thought I had it and I did not. I did not have my lineup. So there you go. But we're going to get all of these stamped in. That last flower, I forgot to stamp off once. So you'll see what the full color look is. So that was a little bit of a happy accident, but I did cover it up with a sentiment you'll see in the end of the video when you see all of the finished cards. So if you ever do make a mistake like that, that's where you can pop your sentiment on or another layer or, however you want to fix your boo-boo. But I was actually kind of glad that you could see the difference in the color because it is really striking. Like it's a big difference. And that's one of the reasons why I like stamping off so much. You see that? So much deeper of a color. And I just like the stamped off version so much better. Okay, so I fussy cut out the masks, and what I'm doing is I'm going to remove a little bit of the tackiness from the back of the mask on the larger stamps in particular. I like to do this, and it just helps it make it a little bit easier to reposition this because we are going to use this mask several times throughout this card as we are stamping. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to lay down both masks, the large and the small flower, at the same time. And this is something that can be easy to forget. So I'm just going to mention it. As you're, lining up your mask with your stamp. Now, if you prefer to die cut out your masks, you can do that. But just remember, there's a little bit of a border. So there will be a little bit of gap of white in between if you don't fussy cut. That's why I like to fussy cut the masks. But it's totally up to you. But you can get a really nice tight fit whenever you start, stamping in your leaves. So what I want to do is I just want to be mindful that where I am stamping my green leaves is only around the masks. So as long as the masks are there, we're all set. But I don't want to accidentally stamp over one of the flowers that doesn't have a mask. So it is up to you. If you feel like you're going to forget and it would just be easier to make a couple of masks and that way you could protect all of your flowers at once, go for it. For me, I just repositioned as I went. The one thing that I did learn as I was doing this, because I was trying to go quickly, I ended up getting garden green all over my fingers when I was pulling up those masks because you're, stamping over it. And so I ended up transferring some of the garden green with my finger as opposed to the mask. So you might just want to give it a second, let that ink set before you pull up your mask. But just something that you want to keep in mind. I tend to be a messy stamper and I tend to learn these things the hard way. And of course, you can always fix your boo-boos however you want. But that is, one of the things that I wanted to mention, especially because I'm sliding my fingers all over the place, right? So I just worked my way up the panel and I'm stamping just at random all around these flowers. And the reason that I'm doing that, more for it being what it would accurately look like, floral wise, I'm doing this stylistically because I want to have really nice pops of green all throughout my layer. I really want to use that as a fill color. But if you would like more flowers and less green, then you could add more stamps and then, do, more of the florals and less of the green. And I did actually do that with one of the other cards here that you're going to see coming up in a minute. I changed out the type of leaf and then I also did the different flowers. So two-tone Flora has all of these different size and shape flowers, and I was determined to use every single stamp. I wanted to see every single flower, and I thought about doing it on a single panel. And for those of you who do decide that you want to use the Stamparatus for this technique, I actually think if you sat down and positioned all of these flowers really well on your panel, like measured out your panel and everything, and then picked all of the stamps up at one time with your Stamparatus plate, I think you could do it. I did not personally do that. I was going to, and then I changed my mind. So what I did was I tended to do 2 or 3 flower patterns per card. But I really truly thought about doing every single flower on one card, and I didn't do it. So if you do it, let me know. And if you've done the triple stamping technique, please let me know. I would love to hear if that is something you have done. Now, one of the reasons why this is still at a low speed is because I really want it, for those of you who like to stamp along with me or you like to pause as you go, I really wanted you to truly see how I built this out. The top comment that I got on the live when I was creating this, nobody, seemed to mind too much about the mistakes. Everybody was really understanding about the lineups not being perfect, but everybody loved the color combination. Everybody loved how bold and vibrant and pretty this pattern looked. So for those of you who are still with me at the 27-minute mark, I just want to shout you out and say thank you so much for being here and for watching the video for this long. Not many people make it this far, and I just want you to know how much I appreciate you being here and engaging with these videos, however you choose to do that. I can't tell you what it means to me to have all of you here watching, subscribing, commenting, sharing. It helps my business so much. It really helps the videos get seen. And that is something that I don't talk about in every single video, but just wanted to mention. Now here, with this little sentiment, what I'm doing is I'm literally taking a piece of 1/2 inch basic white scrap paper and trimming it down with my paper trimmer. So turned out to be a 1/2 inch by 3 inches. And again, I'll have those measurements on the project sheet. Okay, so here we go. And you can see me placing this one over my little boo-boo stamp. All right, so here is where we're getting into original content, meaning I did not do this card on my Facebook Live. This is something that I added after the fact. So this is Pale Papaya, and this is using the Stamparatus. So what I chose to do was a combination of 3 flowers. These 3 flowers are different than the 2 flowers I had just used on the polished paint card. And my layering color, my detail color is Mango Melody. That was what I had chosen to use with Pale Papaya. And I'm using both of my Stamparatus plates. So my, my foundational floral pieces, or the floral stamps rather, were on one plate, and then the details were on the second plate. And so what you do, I had already had mine set up, but you just lay them down on the panel and then pick them up with your plate. And so you lay that layering piece down, pick it up with the second plate, and then that way you could stamp this again and again and again as many times as you want. I had slight overlap with that smallest flower, and I was fine with it. If you want to reposition it just very slightly so that it's not, overlaying, that's fine. But I knew there was going to be a lot of layering with this. Now you can see that my masks are already created, and we're going to repeat the same process as last time. What I am doing here is I am swapping out the different type of leaf, and we are incorporating these tiny little baby flowers as well. So I'm going to speed this next part up just very slightly to make this go a little bit faster, and then we'll jump to this completed card. Okay, so here we're placing our masks. In this case, I have 3 masks, and I'm going to put all 3 down at one time. And again, you're just going to want to be mindful, just like the last time. And I'm going to be using garden green, but I'm going to be using this larger, it almost looks like a vine. And you will notice that I have abandoned my Stamparatus plate. So I'm going to leave this up to you, and you can leave me a comment and let me know how you would do this particular part of the stamping. But for me, I needed to be more free-handed when it came to the leafy parts of this, because I was going to have it going in every which direction over my masks. So that's up to you as to how you want to handle that. I decided to forgo the Stamparatus, but I kept using the base. The one thing you want to be mindful of is that your clear blocks don't come into contact with the hinges on the edges there. And that is why I moved the panel down so it's very low on this, so that I didn't, so that it didn't interfere with the stamping with the clear block. So just something else you want to keep in mind. And then this is one of those things where I wanted to have as much white filled in as possible. I wanted very little blank white space. I wanted stamps everywhere because essentially I want to create my own DSP, right? That's basically what we're doing with Fancy Flora. So there is this tiny little cluster of little baby flowers, and I thought I'm literally stamping them everywhere. So I chose to do that in Mango Melody. I went for that slightly darker orange, and I stamped them all over the place. And again, I had some overlap and some layers. And that's up to you whether or not you want that look, but I just did not want a lot of white space. So here, I'm going to go ahead and remove my mask, and then we will show the completed card. This thank you stamp is actually from Something Fancy, and I love the way that this looks. For those of you who do want to add embellishments, I am getting the 2021-2023 opal rounds, and I'm going to pop these onto my card in Pale Papaya. I had a bunch of Pale Papaya left, and it does add such a nice little element of sparkle there. And with the Pale Papaya being a lighter cardstock, you can decide if you want your panel to be so busy or if you really want that to stand out. But I absolutely loved it. Okay, so here we are coming in with fresh freesia. Same three florals, same process, but you will see when I lift up this plate that largest flower does not have an even amount of ink on it, and that bothers me. So I decided to do a second round, and I was glad I did because this is an example of taking a lighter shade and then doubling up on the color. So just in the same way that we stamp off and lighten a color, sometimes we can darken a color by doing this in layers. And the only way we can really effectively do that is with the Stamparatus. So if you make a mistake, it's easier to fix. If you want to customize your color, stamp it 2 or 3 times, you can do that. My detail color is Highland Heather. Now you can decide if just once is enough for you. I wanted it twice. And I was really, really thrilled with the way this color combination turned out. I had been using Orchid Oasis almost exclusively with Fresh Freesia as my layering color with Fancy Flora, and I love the way Highland Heather looks. Oh my gosh. So we're just doing our second round of this. I decided to stamp this twice as well. We are going to change out our smaller flower though. I think I ended up using both on this card, but you'll get to see a slight difference in the patterns, and that was because I wanted to try to use each one of the floral stamps on all of these cards. So I did stamp it twice. And now we're going to come back in with that detail layer one more time. And I thought these actually ended up looking really bold and vibrant, which isn't my first thought when I think of fresh freesia. So I would, if you are going to use the Stamparatus, I would recommend doubling up on lighter colors and seeing what you think of that, because I will honestly tell you, I would not have done that had I not made a mistake, like a stamping mistake. And I was so happy that I did. And when we first stamp this in color down, that's not necessarily the way that it dries, right? Like once it dries, it looks like it's more original color. And I had noticed that my little center rectangle there wasn't perfectly straight. And you know what? It's fine. With the triple time stamping technique, there's a lot of forgiveness when you have those layers in between. So I'm going to skip ahead. I had to, while I was filming, I had to make more masks. I made new masks each card. So I will say that, but I did use the same mask throughout the same card. So what I'm going to do is jump ahead to adding that next new flower. Okay, so there is a cluster of 4 flowers that also has a layering stamp. So what I decided to do was bring this in with a single fresh freesia stamp. I did this freehand. You could see I got close to those hinges there. And what I'm doing, again, I'm trying to eliminate that white space. I want to fill the white space. That was one of my goals with this triple time stamping. And if you like white space, just don't, do these additional layers. You can stop wherever you're comfortable. I decided to take this and just fill in. So I don't think there's any spot on this card where you're actually seeing all 4 of the flowers together, but I loved this border. I thought this was such a delicate flower. It was so pretty. And honestly, you don't even need the layer, but I did add it. So again, I did not, and of course, this is freehanding. So when it came to those sort of centerpiece flowers, those were fine with the Stamparatus. But on both of these cards, I decided to forgo the Stamparatus when I was doing this edging stamping. And there were times that I got this right on target, and there were times when my layer, stamping wasn't perfect. So you can, take your time with this. I was sort of, rushing through it, but I have to say, when you're looking at these finished cards, I don't notice it. So it's up to you, but I do want to be, perfectly honest about with my 2-step stamping. I can't say I was like 100% on point this video. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to skip ahead to the finished card. But before I do that, I did add in these tiny flowers again. So I did the Highland Heather for the little baby tiny flowers. And again, I'm just going in and I'm just adding some filler where I'm seeing that white. I did not stamp this one as many times on the Fresh Freesia card, mostly because I was able to put 5 different style flowers on this card. So there was quite a lot going on. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump ahead to the finished card. Okay, so here I'm going to show you all 5 finished cards. Here is Pale Papaya, Mango Melody, and Garden Green as our color combo there. Here is Polished Pink, Sweet Sorbet, and Garden Green combo. This card has the most white on it and really more concentrated on flowers. Here is our Fresh Freesia card. This one, oh my gosh, I was in love with this card. And I popped this one up on dimensionals so that you could see the difference if you wanted to pop that up. And I have to say, it was stunning. So there's the difference between the flat card and the one that's popped up on dimensionals. And just fun fact, I ran out of my regular size dimensionals, so I used the foam strips on that. And then here is our Evening Evergreen Lucky Clover card, Pear Pizzazz Evening Evergreen and Garden Green. And then there is that card you didn't get to see me make, which is the Soft Succulent Lucky Clover card. Be sure to leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought of this technique and these cards, what your favorite in color is. And if you haven't already subscribed, I would love to have you subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned to the next video.